Hope you like fire, Mother. Oh, Amanda's whisper was colder than the autumn wind that rattled the windows. I saw her hand slide the heavy bolt into place, the sound sharp as a gunshot. My daughter-in-law stood there with a smile that didn't belong to family, only to predators. Flames licked the floorboards, greedy and fast. Their glow, turning her face into something unrecognizable. Behind her, my own son Daniel watched in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to meet mine. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was an obstacle. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. Maybe you're at a kitchen table with a cup of coffee warming your hands. Or maybe you're lying awake at midnight when stories like this refuse to let you sleep. Tell me, because stories like mine only matter if they're shared. I am Lucinda Grant. I am 68 years old, a widow, and the keeper of a fortune worth more than $5 billion. Money, my late husband, Benjamin, built carefully, over decades, not for greed, but for security. True wealth, he always said, is what remains standing when you're gone. He left me his company, his trust funds, his investments. But more than that, he left me memories, the kind that used to feel like shelter. Benjamin's old leather armchair still sat by the window, its arms worn smooth by years of his quiet reading. A silver coffee cup he bought me on our 20th anniversary rested on the mantel. A wedding photo, framed in mahogany, captured the moment. He slipped his ring onto my hand. These objects were anchors, reminders of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. And yet those anchors became chains. To Amanda, they were nothing more than keys to vaults she couldn't yet open. She had been patient, smiling through holidays, staging family dinners, rehearsing her sweetness for Daniel's benefit. But I saw the cracks, the too bright laughter, the way she called me mother only when she wanted something. Still, I clung to hope. I told myself Daniel loved me, that Amanda was simply young and ambitious. I ignored the unease when she offered to handle paperwork, to make things easier. I pretended not to notice when Daniel stopped asking for my advice. His words sharper, his visits shorter. Mothers are good at forgiving, even when forgiveness is a wound we keep reopening. So when they invited me to the old cabin in Montana, calling it a birthday surprise, I wanted to believe. Amanda's voice on the phone had been syrupy sweet. We fixed it up just for you, just like old times. I should have heard the trap in her tone. I should have recognized the smile she'd practiced in the mirror. But when you're widowed and lonely, even poisoned honey tastes like love. That is how I walked into fire, carrying nothing but trust. The fire swallowed the cabin behind me, but it didn't swallow me. Benjamin's voice echoed in my head. Always know your way out, Lucinda. I remembered the trap door he had built under the study, hidden behind a crooked bookcase, crawling through the smoke. Me palms bleeding. I found it my only salvation. When I pushed it open and felt the cool breath of earth against my face, I realized I was still alive. But survival is not the same as being safe. By the time I stumbled into the forest, covered in soot and half-dazed, I knew what Amanda had done wasn't just murder. It was erasure. She wanted me gone, forgotten. A headline in tomorrow's newspaper: Elderly widow lost in cabin fire. Hours later, I walked into a gas station miles away. my dress scorched, my hair reeking of smoke. The clerk froze mid-sentence, staring at me as if I were a ghost. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he whispered. His eyes said what his mouth didn't. I looked like someone who had already died. I tried to explain, but my voice was cracked, broken by smoke and betrayal. When I begged to use the phone, his politeness faltered. He dialed Daniel for me, his fingers hesitant. "Your mother's here," I heard him say. Relief should have washed over me. Instead, silence stretched so long. I wondered if the line had gone dead. Then Daniel's voice came, clipped, impatient. "She's confused. Just keep her there. I'll handle it." Oh, handle it. I understood then he believed Amanda's lies. He thought I was crazy, delusional, maybe even dangerous. My own son, the boy I had raised through fevers and heartbreaks, saw me as a problem to be managed. When he arrived, his smile was stiff, his embrace brief. "Mom," he said gently, too gently, "you've been under a lot of stress. Amanda told me you've been forgetting things. Maybe you imagined. The burns on my arms were real. The smoke in my lungs was real. The lock on the door was real." But Daniel looked at me with pity, not belief. Behind him, Amanda's text buzzed on his phone. I caught a glimpse. "Make sure she stays quiet." Oh, I wasn't just discarded. I was silenced. As Daniel drove me back to town, neighbors waved from porches, their faces curious. To them, I must have looked like a frail old widow clinging to her son's arm, not the woman he had nearly buried. Their whispers followed me. "Poor Lucinda. She's losing her mind." Amanda's poison had already spread. I pressed my burned palms together and stared out the window. They thought I was finished. But ash don't disappear. Sometimes they rise. Daniel didn't take me home. He took me to a clinic. The building smelled of bleach and resignation, with pale walls that looked more like a holding pen than a place of care. "Mom," Daniel said softly, guiding me to a chair. "Just let the doctor take a look. It's for your own good." The doctor, Henry Collins, introduced himself with a smile too polished, too rehearsed. His questions came quickly. "Have you been forgetting where you put things? Hearing voices? Seeing things that aren't there?" "No," I answered firmly, but my voice wavered from exhaustion. His pen moved anyway, scratching down notes I never gave. When I mentioned the fire, his brows knit together in a pitying expression. "Cabin fires are common in autumn. Maybe you had a bad dream and confused it with reality." A dream. My burns stung under the bandages. The smell of smoke still clung to my hair. Yet there I sat, being dismissed like a child spinning fairy tales. Amanda arrived halfway through the evaluation. She swept into the room in a tailored blazer, her perfume sharp, her smile angelic. "Oh, Mother," she cooed. "We're so worried about you. You've been so forgetful lately." Forgetful. That was her weapon. She painted me as fragile, senile, an old woman slipping away. Daniel sat there nodding, his eyes glazed, his trust blind. I tried to fight back. "You locked me inside that cabin. You watched the fire." My words tore from my throat, raw and desperate. But Amanda only laid a gentle hand on my arm. her voice sweet enough to choke. "See?" she said to Dr. Collins. "Paranoia. She insists we tried to hurt her." The doctor nodded. "Writing faster. We'll recommend further observation." I was humiliated. Trapped in a theater where everyone else had already memorized their lines. No matter what truth I spoke, Amanda turned it into evidence of madness. My own son wouldn't meet my eyes. To him, I was already gone. When they escorted me out, whispers followed. Nurses murmured. "Poor woman. Dementia." A neighbor I recognized from church shook her head as I passed. Amanda leaned in close. Her words a dagger meant only for me. "No one believes you. You're finished." That night, I sat alone in a motel room Daniel had arranged. The sheets were thin, the walls yellowed with age. My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a woman who looked broken, discarded. But my eyes still burned. Amanda wanted me invisible. Instead, she had made me dangerous. The motel reeked of stale cigarettes and loneliness. I sat on the bed with a styrofoam cup of bitter coffee, my burned hands trembling, wondering if Amanda had already planned my obituary. Every knock on the thin door made me flinch. On the third morning, the knock wasn't a threat. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Lucinda, it's Ruth." I froze. Ruth Bennett, Benjamin's old colleague. My dearest friend, once upon a time. I opened the door, and there she stood. Older, grayer, but her eyes still sharp as steel. She took one look at me and gasped. "Dear God, what did they do to you?" The walls I had built crumbled. I let her in, and the story spilled out every detail of the cabin. The lock, Amanda's smile in the firelight. Ruth didn't interrupt, didn't pity me. She listened, her jaw tightening with every word. When I finished, she said simply, "Then we fight." Her conviction startled me. "Fight? With what?" "They've already branded me senile. Even Daniel believes them." Ruth's eyes narrowed. "Then we find someone who doesn't believe in their lies. I know a man, Max Carter, retired detective. He owes me a favor." That afternoon, Max walked into the motel room. He was in his 70s, a limp in his step, but his handshake was firm. Unflinching, his eyes scanned me the way a hunter studies tracks in the dirt. "Mrs. Grant," he said quietly, "Ruth tells me your family tried to erase you." Erase," I whispered, the word slicing deeper than fire. "Yes." He pulled a small notebook from his coat. "Tell me everything. Names, dates, places." He hesitated, but Ruth's steady gaze pushed me forward. I told him about Dr. Collins, the false evaluation, Amanda's staged sweetness, the whispers about dementia. Max wrote quickly, his pen scratching like a blade against paper. When I finished, he leaned back. "You don't just have greedy relatives. You've got a conspiracy. Doctors, lawyers, maybe more. Predators dressed as family. But predators always leave tracks." My pulse quickened. "And if I don't have proof?" He gave a thin smile. "Then we'll find it. And once we do, they won't be able to silence you again." For the first time since the fire, I felt something other than despair. I felt a spark. Amanda thought I was ash, but Ruth and Max were proof. Embers can ignite again. Max didn't waste time. 2 nights later, we drove in silence through Portland's damp streets until we reached Daniel and Amanda's house. My house, once Benjamin and I had filled its walls with laughter before they stripped it of warmth. Max moved with quiet efficiency. "Stay close," he whispered, as he picked the side lock with the ease of a man who'd done it too many times. Inside, the air smelled of lavender candles. Staged perfection. Not a trace of family. Just a showroom. We headed to the basement. Dust clung to the air. Thick and heavy. Boxes lined the walls, each neatly labeled in Amanda's sharp handwriting. Max opened one and pulled out a folder. "Look, Endo." My knees nearly buckled. It was my will rewritten. My signature forged at the bottom. Pages transferring control of the trusts. The properties. The accounts. All to Daniel and Amanda. I ran my fingers over the ink. "I never signed this." Endo. Max's jaw tightened. "Exactly. Forgery? This clean means someone helped them. Probably your lawyer?" We pressed on. In a drawer, we found a medical report. "Patient exhibits signs of confusion, paranoia, declining memory. Signed by Dr. Henry Collins. Ali." On official letterhead. Then Max's flashlight caught something wedged into a sofa cushion. He unzipped the seam and pulled out a small black USB drive. He handed it to me like it was dynamite. This could be it. Oh. Back in Ruth's kitchen. We plugged it into Max's old laptop. A folder appeared. Spring plan. Oh. Inside were recordings. I pressed play. My heart pounding. Amanda's voice filled the room. Calm. Rehearsed. Mother's been declining for months. When she wandered to the cabin alone, we begged her not to go. We did everything we could. Oh. Danielle's voice followed. Grave and practiced. She was frail. We warned her about the fire. But she insisted. Oh. I covered my mouth. My body shaking. They weren't just planning to kill me. They were rehearsing the lie they would tell the world. Max leaned back. A grim smile cutting across his face. "This, Mrs. Grant, is gold. Proof of intent. Proof they plotted it." Tears stung my eyes. But for the first time, they weren't from despair. They were from relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't forgotten. The truth lived on this tiny drive. Unburned. Undeniable. Amanda thought the fire would erase me. Instead, it lit the trail straight to her. The USB drive never left my sight. I slipped it into a locket I wore around my neck, as if it were Benjamin's ring instead of cold plastic. Proof had become my armor. Max wanted patience. "We build the case," he said, slow and steady. "One step wrong and they'll bury this deeper than you can imagine." But I knew Amanda. She thrived when she thought she was unchallenged. The only way to rattle her was to remind her I was still breathing. So I returned to the places she thought I would never dare. The first Sunday, I walked into St. Mary's Church. Conversations hushed. Heads turned. People had already heard the rumor that I'd wandered into a fire. That I was confused. Unstable. But there I was in my best navy coat. Hair brushed. Lipstick neat. Scars hidden beneath gloves. I stood tall. Mrs. Parker, who sat behind Amanda every week, leaned over. "Lucinda, we thought..." Her voice trailed off. "I'm fine," I said simply. letting the weight of those words ripple through the pews. Better than fine. I. The whispers shifted tone from pity to curiosity. Later that afternoon, I visited the grocery store. Amanda happened to be there, her cart overflowing with imported cheeses and wine. She froze when she saw me in the aisle, my basket filled with nothing but bread and milk. "Mother," she said, her smile brittle, "you should be resting." I. Resting? I tilted my head. "After everything you've done, Amanda, I think you're the one who should rest before the truth exhausts you." Her eyes flashed panic for just a second before she forced a laugh. "You're imagining things again?" But two employees stocking shelves were watching, whispering. She knew they'd heard. Hair perfect mask, cracked. That night, Ruth called. "People are talking. They're asking questions. You've planted doubt." Exactly what I wanted. Amanda built her world on perception, polished lies, and practiced sympathy. Now every sideways glance, every hushed conversation would gnaw at her. At home, I sat in Benjamin's armchair and opened the family photo album. One picture caught my eye, Amanda holding Emma, her newborn daughter, smiling wide. Back then, I believed her grin was genuine. Now I saw it for what it was. Hunger. But hunger makes people sloppy. And Amanda was about to choke on her own greed. Max spread the documents across Ruth's dining table. Each page a fracture line in the story Amanda wanted to tell. Bank transfers, notarized forms, letters stamped with seals that screamed legitimacy. "Look at the dates," he said, tapping one stack. "These transactions were filed weeks before the fire. Someone was preparing to move your money the moment you disappeared." I leaned closer, my stomach tightening. Each wire had been routed through Marcus Reed, my investment manager, a man I'd trusted for decades. "Marcus?" My voice cracked. "He handled Benjamin's accounts. He was family." Max shook his head. "No. Mrs. Grant. He was business, and business smells blood." The betrayal spread wider. It wasn't just Amanda and Daniel. Milavier. Patricia Lang. Her signature appeared on amended trust documents I'd never seen. And Dr. Collins, the physician who called me paranoid, had signed off on medical evaluations declaring me incompetent. It was a web, each strand perfectly placed to strangle me. Ruth's hands trembled as she flipped through a folder. "Lucinda, it's bigger than Amanda. She's just the face, the one greedy enough to strike first." Max nodded. "This is organized. Professionals forge the reports. Lawyers smooth the paperwork. Investment managers siphon the funds. Families like yours are just the delivery system." I sat back, the room spinning. All this time I thought I'd been fighting Amanda alone. But she was only a client willing to rent her conscience to a machine that devoured the elderly. My blood chilled. "How many others?" Max's gaze was hard. "Enough to make you the lucky one. You survived." And that word survived pressed against me like a weight. Survival wasn't victory. Survival meant obligation. If I was alive, I had to expose them. Amanda thought she had erased me with fire. What she had really done was push me into the heart of something darker, something she wasn't even strong enough to control. I closed the file slowly, me fingers steady now. If Amanda sold herself to this network, then she's not just my betrayer. She's their accomplice. And if she thinks she can silence me again, she's wrong. Um, Ruth's eyes met mine, fierce with unspoken promise. Then let's bring the whole thing down. Um, for the first time since the flames, I felt clarity. Amanda wasn't my only enemy, but she would be the first to fall. It began with a knock at Ruth's door. Polite, rehearsed, almost timid. When I opened it, Amanda stood there in a cream coat, her hair pinned back neatly, a pearl necklace at her throat. She looked like the portrait of composure, the perfect daughter-in-law. "Mother," she said softly, as though the word could heal the wounds she had carved. "Daniel and I, we've been thinking. We'd like you to come home." Behind her, Daniel overed, his eyes downcast, his voice quieter. "We shouldn't be fighting like this. Dad wouldn't have wanted it." I studied them both. Two actors fumbling their lines. Their smiles were too bright, their hands too steady. If I hadn't already seen the forged documents, the recordings, the carefully laid plans, perhaps I would have believed them. But the smoke from the cabin still clung to my lungs. I agreed anyway. Yes, dinner would be nice. At their house that evening, the table was set like a magazine spread. Crystal glasses gleamed, silverware polished until it blinded. Amanda had prepared roasted lamb, mashed potatoes, even a lemon tart she knew I once loved. Every detail screamed of a performance staged for an audience of one. We sat together, the air heavy with false warmth. Daniel poured wine into my glass, his hand trembling just enough for me to notice. Amanda's smile never wavered. "To family," she said, lifting her glass. "To survival?" I replied. Her smile faltered. The meal began with small-talk neighbors. Weather. Old memories twisted into pleasantries. But beneath every word pulsed the tension of things unsaid. Amanda leaned forward, her tone sweet. "You must be tired. Mother, everything you've been through, the fire, the confusion. Wouldn't it be easier if you let us handle things? Your accounts, the company papers. We only want to take care of you." I set down my fork, the scrape echoing louder than her words. "You want to take care of me?" I said slowly. "Or you want to take what I've spent a lifetime protecting?" Daniel cleared his throat, trying to smooth the edges. "Mom, please. We just don't want you stressed. People talk. You know, they say you've been forgetful." And 7. Forgetful. The word again. They used it like a knife. Sharp and casual. Meant to cut, without leaving a mark. I let silence stretch, heavy and suffocating. Then I smiled a cold, quiet smile. Funny. I don't remember forgetting. Amanda's hand tightened around her glass. The mask slipped for a heartbeat. I saw the steel behind her eyes, the calculation beneath her charm. For the rest of dinner, we played our roles. They smiled. I nodded. The candles flickered between us. But the truth buzzed louder than any polite conversation. This was not reconciliation. This was reconnaissance. They wanted to measure how much I knew, how far I had come, and whether I was still weak enough to destroy. As I rose from the table, I caught Amanda's reflection in the mirror behind her. For the first time, she wasn't smiling. She was staring sharp, afraid, unblinking. And I knew then, the fire hadn't finished our story. It had only set the stage. The night after that uneasy dinner, I decided waiting was no longer enough. Amanda and Daniel thought they could manipulate perception, but perception bends under the weight of proof. I chose the battlefield. Their own living room. I arrived uninvited, slipping into the house while the evening lamps still burned. Benjamin's leather armchair still sat by the window. My window. Once, I lowered myself into it, the USB drive cold against my chest, the family album resting in my lap. When the front door opened, their laughter spilled inside. It died the moment they saw me. "Hello? Darlings," I said softly. "Welcome home." Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel staggered back, his keys clattering to the floor. For a moment, they looked like children caught stealing cookies. Not criminals who had tried to erase me in fire. "I see you redecorated," I continued, flipping open the album. "But you forgot one thing. You can't redecorate memory." I turned a page. Eliza's handwriting once filled the margins with silly notes. Now I pointed to a photo of Amanda holding her infant daughter, smiling wide. "Do you remember this? You were once a woman who smiled at life. Now you smile at flames." Amanda's voice cracked. "You can't prove anything." I leaned forward, pressing a button on the small recorder I'd hidden in my pocket. Her own voice filled the room, rehearsed and hollow. "Mother's been declining for months. When she wandered to the cabin alone, we begged her not to go. Then Daniel's followed. She was frail. We warned her about the fire, but she insisted. Their faces drained of color. That," I said, my voice calm, "is your proof?" Amanda lunged forward, but I snapped the recorder shut, my gaze steady. "And that's just a fraction. Copies are with people who know how to use them. If anything happens to me again, your lies will burn brighter than the cabin you tried to bury me in." Daniel's fists clenched, his bravado flickering like a candle about to die. "No court will believe you. You're just an old woman with stories." I spread the forged documents across the coffee table. The fake will, the false medical reports, the draft death certificate. These stories are written in your handwriting, Daniel, and yours, Amanda. Ink doesn't burn as easily as wood. Silence pressed down on the room. The ticking of Benjamin's watch on my wrist sounded louder than any word. Amanda's mask cracked completely. Her eyes gleamed with fury, her voice rising. "You don't understand. We weren't the first, and we won't be the last. There are others, people bigger than us. You can't fight them all." I stood slowly, closing the album, my voice like ice. "Perhaps not, but I can fight you. And tonight, that's enough." The knock on the door came sharp and final. Federal agents stepped inside, badges flashing. Cynthia Hale at their lead. Amanda's gasp broke the silence like glass shattering. "You set us up," she whispered. I smiled, cold and steady. "No, Amanda, you set yourselves up. I just lit the match of truth." The trial ended in a storm of headlines, testimonies, and forged papers stripped bare for the world to see. Amanda and Daniel were taken away in shackles, their empire of lies crumbling under the weight of their own greed. I didn't need to shout in court. Truth had already spoken louder than my tears ever could. But true victory isn't the sound of the gavel. True victory is what remains when the echoes fade. Weeks later, I returned to the cabin. We rebuilt it, not as a place of betrayal, but as a sanctuary. We called it Haven House, a refuge for women betrayed by the very families they once protected. Lavender now lined the porch, its fragrance washing away the memory of smoke and ruin. Benjamin's old leather chair had been polished, restored, still bearing the weight of years. The last time I sat there, I was prey, cornered and humiliated. Now, I sat with proof, peace, and a purpose greater than myself. The USB still hung around my neck, emptied, but kept as a symbol. Evidence does more than expose lies. It preserves memory, safeguards dignity, and teaches the next generation. Ruth handed me a cup of tea. "You closed the circle, Lucinda," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. I opened it for those who need a place to begin again." Letters had already arrived at Haven House. Widows robbed of savings, mothers stripped of inheritance, grandmothers silenced by greed. Each letter reminded me my fire was never mine alone. It was a light in a dark forest, showing others the path out. That night, I turned to Benjamin's photo album. Amanda's face, as a child, smiled back at me. Innocence untouched by ambition. For the first time, I felt no rage, only clarity. The chair was the same, but I was not. I closed the album and whispered, "This time, I am the one closing the door." And with that, the loop was complete. Not with fire, but with truth, with law, and with a legacy that protects others. If you're listening, remember this. Betrayal can break hearts. Silence destroit futur. Protect your family by keeping records, securing legal documents, and building a circle of support. Never confuse kindness with weakness. Dignity is defended by action. Share your story below, because when one voice rises, others find the courage to speak.